Okay, so I just finished a session with a group of remote fly-in Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario. My favorite places to go, and it's so nice to be able to be back there and teaching with them. I think this is like our fourth or fifth session, and tonight we really got to one of the root problems, where we get to talk about insulin resistance, the insulin resistance cascade, diabetes, obesity, and it really being one of the most deadly diseases that we have. I mean, it has the most morbidity associated with it, being having a mechanistic direct causal link to the development of cardiovascular disease like atherosclerosis and vascular diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, sarcopenia as we age, or frailty throughout aging. And so this is a disease that needs to be stopped. And I really spent a solid half hour here explaining how important it is to detect this disease earlier, because the tools that we use to measure it now are way too blunt. It's the A1Cs are, by the time your A1Cs are rising, it's already too late. The progression of this disease is just, it needs to be identified sooner. And so in this video, we talk about the development of diabetes and the insulin resistance cascade and all of those comorbidities associated with that, how to stop that. So I give four major tools or levers that we could pull to help control diabetes, medicine being one of those, one small part of it actually. And then as well, what we need to be doing to be able to detect this disease earlier. And so I really wanted to make a little bit of a resource for everybody, for us personally, but for us, if we have any control in anybody, any health center, I mean, share this with health directors that are controlling the functions at our health centers, because this is something that needs to be changed. We need to be identifying diabetes as early as possible. And by the time A1Cs start to rise, we could have identified diabetes symptoms in our people years and years and years before the stupid A1C starts to rise. So I really think that this is something that everybody needs to understand. So I wanted to share with everybody. So let's go. I really love this conversation because diabetes, metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and the whole cascade of insulin resistance is actually really easy to understand. It's not incredibly complex at all, and something that we're never taught. Like, I don't want to say why, but I don't know why we're never taught how this disease begins. Because, and then as well, like, the tools that we use to measure the progression of diabetes are incredibly blunt and really stupid when you think about it. So the A1Cs, your HbA1c, the average blood sugar that you've had over the course of 3 months, is the main metric that we use to measure and monitor diabetes in everybody from children, right into old age. We use this, and we have a reference range, which is a normal reference range between 4 and 6, and anything above 6 is going to be pre-diabetic, and maybe 6.5, 7. This is different from community to community and from physician to physician, believe it or not. But when diabetes is actually diagnosed, and then we use insulin to try to control diabetes. Or we start incorporating, the doctor will start incorporating different medication like metformin, or now we have SGLT2 inhibitors, which are two really, really cool drugs actually, that help control diabetes from getting any worse, or maybe can be used as tools to help recover from diabetes faster. So yeah, it's super fun to just understand how diabetes begins, because it's not with your A1Cs at the doctor. The disease is so far gone at that point. It's a really useless tool. And so there's a lot of tools being developed and that are actually developed already that help detect signs of metabolic dysfunction way way earlier, like a continuous glucose monitor. Or we could go to our physician, keeping an eye on our insulin, because what happens with diabetes is that it's an issue of when you have too much sugar in your body. Every time you eat food, your body will turn that food into sugar. It doesn't matter if it's protein, if it's fat. Carbohydrates are really easily converted into sugars. And then, of course, there's just eating sugar itself. It will be maybe one of the easiest things to convert into sugar. So every time you eat, you can create sugar. And that sugar is going to get inside of your blood. And insulin is a hormone that tells your body, tells all of the sugar that is inside of your blood to go inside of your muscles. And when all of that sugar is sent inside of your muscles, it's burned. Your muscles use that sugar like energy. Your muscles can hold like 300 grams of sugar inside of your muscles. 300 grams is like, I don't know how many cups that is, like almost 4 cups of sugar. Something really stupid, like a massive amount of sugar you can have in your muscles. The reason why insulin is sending sugar into your muscles is so that it can be burned. Over 80% of the sugar that you eat is disposed of in the muscles. What happens though is we don't use our muscles. We're sitting on Zoom all day. Get home from sitting in the office all day. And then we sit and watch Netflix for the rest of the evening. And, we're not doing nothing. We don't use our muscles. So all of that sugar just continues to grow and build inside of our muscles until there's too much. And when there's too much sugar inside of your muscles, then there's nowhere else to put it. So the insulin, it can't shove more sugar inside of your muscles. And so it starts to send them into other cells. And here's where it gets really interesting, is that your insulin is going to be sending it into all of the sugar into a bunch of cells inside of your body. But sugar is incredibly toxic to just about every cell inside of your body. There's very few actually glucose obligatory organs, meaning there's very few organs inside of your body that need sugar to function properly. Everything else, it's very toxic too. So there's mechanisms inside of the cellular structure of so many parts of your body that are there to spit the sugar back out, which means your blood sugar still stays high because the cells just spit it all out. But there's 4 types of cells that cannot spit the sugar out. That is your kidneys, your nerves, your eyes, and your blood vessels, your endothelial cells. They cannot spit the sugar out. So once it's in those cells, it's in them and it begins to destroy them. This is why, like, when you have diseases of extra sugar and extra insulin, like diabetes and obesity, you have kidney problems, nerve problems, eye problems, blood vessel problems, like, that may end in Alzheimer's and dementia, these vascular issues. But anyways, that sugar will also be repackaged and basically just stuffed inside of a fat cell, turned into fat. Insulin is the primary storage hormone and anti-catabolic hormone inside of your body. So it prevents the breakdown of tissue, but it also supports the building of tissue. And up until we're about 25 years old, insulin is used to build muscles. But it's after we're 25 years old, it's mainly building fat. It's mainly building adipose tissue. So all of the extra energy that we're eating is just stored as fat. And fat itself it's an organ. It's an organ that you're growing inside of your body, and that fat is going to have lots of roles, functions, and responsibilities as an organ. One of those things that it has influence over, one of the things that fat does as an organ is control so many different types of hormones in your body, like estrogen production and things like that. But one of the things that it does is it makes insulin very weak. And so when insulin is weakened by the fat that we're growing, then our pancreas needs to make more insulin to keep our blood sugar controlled. So what happens then is our blood sugar, our body is controlling blood sugar with insulin. And when we when we grow fat, our bodies start to require more insulin to control our blood sugar. So, but blood sugar is still controlled. It goes up and it comes down thanks to insulin. So insulin is controlling blood sugar. This is why the A1Cs are a stupid metric to be able to identify diabetes. It's not done until way too late, because for years and years and years, sometimes decades, blood sugar is controlled. Your A1Cs are normal. Insulin is on the rise, though. You begin to see insulin rise because you're growing fat, and the fat is making insulin weak. Your pancreas is starting to have to pump out more, and your body is just has too much energy. And so I really wanted to talk about what the biggest issue, what I think the way that we sort of describe this, or really try to help participants in our programs describe diabetes, is there's certain levers that you can pull that are going to have an impact on diabetes. As diabetes or hyperinsulinemia and hyperglycemia, as this condition is developing inside of you, say you are diabetic, exercise is a really poor lever. Exercise is not going to do anything if you're diabetic. If you're already diabetic, you start pulling on that exercise lever, it's not really going to work, because as insulin resistance develops in muscle tissue, your muscles are not accepting sugar. Your muscles are not, as diabetes develops, your muscles become insulin resistant. And when your muscles are resistant to insulin, insulin is not allowed to send sugar to the muscles. And so there's no energy there to burn. And that's why when you're diabetic, exercise can actually even be a bad thing, because when you start to exercise, your body thinks that it needs energy, it pumps out the energy, but your muscles are not able to accept it, so that energy just stays inside of your blood in the form of blood sugar. So now your blood sugar is elevated because of the exercise. And how do you bring that blood sugar down? Well, you need insulin. Where does insulin send it? To your kidneys, to your nerves, to your blood vessels, to your eyes. It turns it into fat, and this fat accumulates inside of your liver, and you have fatty liver. And so exercise is a very poor lever to pull in a diabetic. What I wanted to share, what I think that is very important for everybody to understand who is concerned about metabolic dysfunction and diabetes and this whole cascade of insulin resistance, is that biggest lever that you can pull is they're called N6 fatty acids. They're called omega-6 fatty acids, linoleic acid metabolites. It's vegetable oils. So vegetable seed oils like canola, soy, cottonseed, grapeseed, rapeseed, all of these vegetable seed oils that we cook all of our food in, that we're taught is healthy, just in the name of it being called vegetable oils, we think that vegetables are healthy, so vegetable oil is going to be healthier. Or when we see pig lard versus vegetable shortening, we think vegetable shortening is going to be the better thing. But vegetable oils, and more importantly, what vegetable oils are oxidized into, once a lot of them reach 60, 80 degrees, they will begin to oxidize. And when they oxidize, they turn into, it transforms into a different structure. And what N6 fatty acids will transform into they're called oxalams, oxalated linoleic acid metabolites, which are the most toxic things you could ever be putting inside of your body. One of the biggest reasons why these are the most toxic things inside of your body is because they directly induce insulin resistance in the muscle. So you take a normal person who eats a bunch of food, blood sugar goes up, insulin sends the sugar into the muscles, vegetable oils make those muscles insulin resistant. So the sugar is not allowed into the muscle. So where does that sugar have to go? It's repackaged, repurposed, stored as fat, or it does damage in the kidneys, nerves, eyes, blood vessels, all those things, and causes all of that damage. But the problem is that the muscles are not accepting the sugar. So you've lost your primary site for glucose disposal. Your body no longer has a way to control blood sugar and insulin is forced to send it elsewhere into fat, and the fat makes insulin weaker, so the pancreas has to make more insulin. And what happens is your body is just saturated, totally saturated with energy, and requiring more and more and more insulin to control your blood sugar. But a lot of people will be able to control their blood sugar, live with normal blood sugar for a long period of time. All the while their insulin is creeping up. So you could go to your doctor, you get your blood test done, ask for your cpeptide, which is a measurement of fasting insulin. And that cpeptide should be, I think the normal reference range is between 5 and 20 or so, maybe 25, maybe 30 to some physicians. But a normal C-peptide should be less than 3, should be less than 2 for a lot of people that we work with. We're able to get that less than 1. We shouldn't need that much insulin to control our blood sugar. And so that's the first sign. Insulin goes up, blood sugar stays normal. Then it gets to the point where your body, what happens is the insulin is sending the sugar into those 4 types of cells, those kidneys, nerves, blood vessels, eyes are all being damaged. They're all being destroyed. And so what those cells do is they develop a resistance to insulin. A resistance to insulin meaning they don't want insulin to be telling all the sugar to come in to your kidneys and destroy them. So let's develop a resistance to insulin. Let's say, I don't want to listen to you anymore. I don't want that sugar coming in. It's destroying me. So they stop listening to insulin. But your pancreas, it has to deal. Your blood sugars are still super high. So it has to go somewhere. So the pancreas will just make more insulin and drive it into those cells. So now we're dealing with outrageous amounts of insulin. And your liver is repackaging all of this energy. And it's taking the fat from what you're eating and the sugar from what you're eating, and it's creating these little things called triglycerides, which is the most energy dense molecule your body is able to make. 3 fatty acids that are attached to a glycerol backbone, and it's storing all of that energy everywhere that it can. It's storing it inside of fat cells, and it can't shove it inside of fat cells enough, so that the liver is starting to become full of the triglycerides, which is what we would call a fatty liver. And so what happens then, the real problem is when the liver, what the liver is supposed to do is when your blood sugar goes too low, your liver brings your blood sugar back up, because it's a big sopping sponge full of sugar. You can have over 200 grams of glycogen, which is a concentrated latticed form of sugar inside of your liver at any point. That's like over 2 cups of sugar you can have inside of your liver. That's a lot of energy. So when your blood sugar goes down, your liver brings it back up. And that's its job. And when your liver runs out of sugar, well, your liver can take fatty acids, and it could separate or take a triglyceride, take the free fatty acids off, and use the glycerol to convert that into sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis, and take the fatty acids, convert those into ketones, and your body's blood sugar is going to stay rock solid. Your liver's job is to keep your blood sugar up to where it should be. If you have hypoglycemia, if your blood sugar drops to the point where you feel a low, that is because your liver is dysfunctional. It's full of too much fat, and it's no longer able to do its job, which is where most of us are. Anyways, in the whole cascade of insulin resistance that begins in the muscles, and you start to develop insulin resistance in different tissues inside of your body, the worst thing that happens is when your liver develops insulin resistance, because your liver is a big sponge full of sugar. Every time you eat, what you eat is converted into sugar. Your blood sugar goes up. Insulin brings those blood sugars back down. Insulin as well will tell the liver to stop putting sugar inside of your blood because you're eating. So when you're eating, you create insulin. That insulin tells your liver to stop spewing out a bunch of sugar. So that's great. because you're eating it. Your liver doesn't have to keep making it and sending it into the blood, further raising your blood sugar. So it's a perfect system. But when your liver develops resistance to insulin, it stops listening to insulin. It will be constantly spewing out sugar into your blood, all the while you're still eating. Well, guess what causes insulin resistance? Mechanistically causes insulin resistance in the liver. That tells your liver to stop listening to insulin, and allows your liver to spew out sugar while you're still eating it, is vegetable oils. So they develop an insulin resistance in the liver, and so at that point in the development of the disease, your liver is now spewing out a bunch of sugar all the while you're eating it, and it's at that point your pancreas, there's no amount of insulin that it can ever make that will control your blood sugar. So then you start to see the blood sugar start to rise. You get your A1Cs and you're like, oh, I'm at a 6.1. My doctor said I'm pre-diabetic. But look at everything that already happened. Everything that already happened is so that is way too far into the disease for healthcare to be able to detect diabetes. That's way too late. These symptoms begin years and years before all of this happens. And so at that point in the disease, what do? We say you need more insulin. So start taking 160 units of insulin every day to control your blood sugar. And the blood sugar is going to be controlled, but the insulin resistance inside of their body is going to continue to grow. And so then we start using drugs like metformin or SGLT2 inhibitors. Metformin is going to be... well, I don't want to get into the mechanisms of these drugs, but SGLT2 inhibitors are really fun because they just give your kidneys the ability to pee out extra sugar. So they really actually help with one of the root problems of the disease, which is just too much energy inside of your body. I don't think those are probably not going to be approved like NIHB for like 20 years or something. So I wouldn't expect to see that, being an available drug for us for a really long time. But even though they're really great, and if we do use them, they're like $15 a day or something like that. Anyway, and it's still really not getting at the root problem, which is the insulin resistance cascade that begins in the muscle. We need to give our muscles the ability to utilize sugar again. If our muscles can use sugar, then the sugar that we're eating, the sugar and energy that's inside of our body is going to be able to be released and burned in the muscle. And so that's the sugar that you eat will be directly sent to the muscles to be burned. The extra energy that's packaged inside of your liver in the form of a triglyceride, those free fatty acids will be burned in the form of ketones, or just free fatty acids sent right to the muscle. It's a preferred substrate over ketones. So that will just be burned for energy when you go for a walk. And all of the extra storage of energy that we have your liver will begin to utilize that and burn it inside of the muscles until we have a normal body that is sensitive to insulin. And it seems like a really pretty picture, but that biggest lever that we have to be able to pull, I want to share with you 3 of them right now. The biggest lever that we can possibly pull to control this entire issue is the vegetable oils. The vegetable oils, which we can understand and show that mechanistically cause insulin resistance in the muscle, in the liver, and really catapult this whole disease way too fast. And so the elimination of vegetable oils is really easy to do as well. You read a bunch of labels, anything that has vegetable oils or cottonseed, rapeseed, grapeseed, canola, even, just to be safe, avoid avocado oil, avoid olive oil, avoid any oil that comes from a plant, and you will... You'll lose your marbles. I have one woman, I keep talking about her, but she actually eliminated vegetable oils for 1 week, and after that week, she had a checkup about a week later, and with her doctor, and got her lipid panels done, got a bunch of blood work done, you know, just regular checkup stuff. And he didn't say anything about her fatty liver. She had stopped eating vegetable oils for about a week. Didn't say anything about her fatty liver, which she had. She actually had signs of NASH, which is the progressed form of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Turns into non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is a progressive form that turns into cirrhosis of the liver, which is an irreversible condition that leads to a liver transplant. And so she had signs of NASH, and so it was a very far progressed fatty liver. And she asked, he was leaving. The meeting was done. Her checkup was done. And she said, hey, what about my fatty liver? And her doctor was like, oh, what fatty liver? And she had no sign of it after just 1 week of quitting vegetable oils. Like, this is that's a big lever that you could pull. And I think that when we're dealing with diabetics, especially in Indigenous communities, uncontrolled diabetes is disgusting. It's horrible. You get people with A1Cs are 12, A1Cs of 14. That's their average blood sugar is 14 over the past 3 months. That's outrageous. And you get people that their postprandial spikes are they just read error, 50s, 60s, 70s. Like what would kill most people, and that's our life. That's how we live every day. And that's really, really bad. I cannot imagine the insulin resistance that is in the body of an Indigenous person in some of the communities that we go to. And I still, you know, think and understand that by far that biggest lever that we could pull is the vegetable oils. Stop that immediately and see what happens to your blood sugar. See what happens to your cpeptide. See what happens to the amount of insulin that your body needs to control its blood sugar. And there's going to be a tremendous impact. Secondly, the second lever that you can pull, which is much smaller than vegetable oils, is medicine. So just to make sure that we have the medicine that we need, all of the medicine, by the way, that helps with diabetes increases the insulin sensitivity of your muscles. So sensitizing your muscles to insulin, meaning that every little bit of an insulin response is going to be sending all of the energy to your muscles to be burned. And so the Labrador tea, the Shkigabuk, Rhododendron groenlandicum, this one is going to be there to help with that process, to help all the energy get to your muscles. That's basically all that it does. By helping energy get to your muscles, you're going to help with the fatty liver. You're going to help with the adiposity, the fat that you have stored. You're with the chaga, the same thing, shkitagan. This shares the same mechanism. It's just helping the energy get inside of your muscles to be burned. My favorite is a combination of pine, white pine, shingwak, and poplar, trembling aspen, azadi. These two barks can be mixed together, and they just do the same thing. Send energy into your muscles to be burned. Obviously, this doesn't really mean much if you're not moving. If you're not moving, that energy is not going to be burned in the muscle, and it's rather just going to stay there. So that lever needs to be working. And so there's three levers that you can pull that are going to have the most tremendous impact on our ability to control diabetes, for sure. And there's so many other things that help. Obviously, there's so many other things that help. And if I could just, introduce a couple more to you just in one breath, we eat way too much carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a completely non-essential nutrient. We do not need to be eating sugar at all. Our body will always be able to make sugar, even if you haven't eaten anything, haven't eaten a lick of any food in 200 days, your body is still going to have a blood glucose of 3.5 millimolar, no matter what. So you're always going to have substrate to create carbohydrates. You have very few glucose obligatory organs in your body that you need to feed. And so you're always going to find that sugar. You don't need sugar, but we eat, on average in Canada and the US, over 400 grams of carbohydrates a day. This is probably worse in Indigenous communities. That is way too much. And if we could get those carbohydrates lower than 100 grams a day, which for most people, diabetics included, is generally very doable, lower than 150 to 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, you know, count those sagas for a week. See how much carbohydrates you eat in a week, and you get those below 100, there's a lot less energy coming into your body, which means that your liver is going to be forced to start utilizing the energy that is within itself, either in the form of a triglyceride, a fatty liver, or glycogen, the sugar that it has. And when your liver starts to run out of glycogen, it starts to utilize fat. The fat that you have stored. And so there's always going to be lots of energy. And if you restrict the amount of energy coming in, all the while lowering insulin resistance in the body, then you're going to have a lot more control over diabetes. But not just that, every comorbid condition associated with diabetes, which is nearly everything. So that's a really good start, I guess, to really understanding how or the progression of diabetes and how horrible of a system we have to be able to detect and measure diabetes. These are way too blunt caveman tools that we are way more precise right now. And so we're really big proponents of continuous glucose monitors. I think those are to be able to get that data, to get those trends, to see what happens with every food that you eat is going to be different inside of everybody. To see the effects of stopping vegetable oils, or to see the effects if you have a cheat day. Oh, have some vegetable oils. Put some salad dressing on your salad, or have some fry bread in some canola oil. Watch what happens to that spike. That sugar is not going to your muscles, and it's a massive panic state. And so, yeah, just, you know, without me pulling in another 14,000 rants, I just could probably just end it at, yes, that's a good introduction to understanding diabetes, insulin resistance, and that whole cascade of events. And with that understanding, I think this is all very simple. And so, yeah, it's awesome.